Donald Trump thought he'd just forced Canada into another cave. He delayed the opening of a bridge that was already finished. He demanded a better deal at the last possible minute. And when the new agreement was announced, the headlines made it sound like a win for Washington. But once people started reading the actual details, the story looked a lot less one-sided than the headlines suggested. The Gordie Howe International Bridge is a $6.4 billion crossing connecting Windsor and Detroit, paid for entirely by Canada. It was finished, tested, and ready to open months ago. Then, the day before the scheduled ribbon cutting, the Trump administration abruptly refused to let it open, demanding the agreement be renegotiated first. Reports at the time suggested the rival Ambassador Bridge's owners, who've held a private monopoly on this crossing for decades, had been lobbying hard in Washington to keep a competitor off the map. After weeks of back and forth, a new deal was finally reached, and the bridge is now scheduled to open on July 27th. On paper, the new agreement hands the United States 50% of the bridge's toll profits for the next 15 years, funneled into a U.S. development fund. Read quickly, that sounds like a major concession. Canada building the bridge, then handing over half the money. But the word that matters here is profits, not revenue. Under the original financing structure, toll revenue has to pay down the massive construction cost before any actual profit exists to split. Multiple analysts, including Windsor's own mayor, say that repayment period could easily stretch past 15 years, meaning the fund Trump gets to point to as his win may end up collecting very little, or possibly nothing at all, during the entire window covered by this deal. If that reading holds up, the actual trade here is remarkably lopsided in Canada's favor. Trump gets to tell his voters he squeezed a better deal out of Canada. Meanwhile, Canada gets exactly what it wanted from the start. The bridge open, cross-border trade moving again, and just as importantly, the end of a decades-long monopoly the Ambassador Bridge's owners have held over the busiest trade corridor on the continent. Manufacturers on both sides of the border get a faster, more modern crossing. The new bridge is a direct highway-to-highway connection, cutting out the string of traffic lights drivers currently deal with to reach the Ambassador Bridge, which should pull a significant share of freight traffic away from the old crossing almost immediately. Not everything in this deal is a one-sided win for Canada, and it's worth being straight about that. The agreement also gives the United States a consultation role on any toll increase greater than 10% in either direction. Some, including Windsor's mayor, wave this off as meaningless. Toll hikes that large are rare anyway. But it's worth noting that on most other shared Canada-US bridges, toll setting is handled by a board with equal Canadian and American representation. On the Gordie Howe Bridge, Canada currently controls that process alone. Handing the U.S. even a consultation role changes that balance, even if it doesn't hand over control outright. It's a real concession, just a much smaller one than 50% of the profits, makes it sound. Here's where the criticism gets harder to wave away. Weeks after this deal was announced, the federal government still hadn't released the actual dollar figures behind it. Not the profit projections, not the repayment timeline, nothing solid enough to check the math yourself. Critics point out that a bridge this size doesn't get built without detailed toll and revenue projections already sitting in a government office somewhere. If those numbers genuinely support the "this costs Canada almost nothing" argument, releasing them would settle the debate instantly. Instead, the silence has left space for the opposition and plenty of online commentary to fill in the gaps with whatever version of the story suits them, usually the version where Canada caved. This isn't happening in isolation either. Over the past year, Canada has walked back its digital services tax and softened its approach on streaming content rules, both under direct U.S. pressure, without getting much in writing back from Washington in return. Critics argue this bridge deal fits the same pattern. Canada absorbing the cost of an unpredictable negotiating partner, one deal at a time, while trying to protect the substance of what it actually needs. So, which is it? A smart piece of negotiating that let Trump claim a symbolic win while Canada kept the substance, or one more example of Canada absorbing a cost it shouldn't have had to? The honest answer is we won't know for certain until the bridge has been open for a while and the real toll numbers start rolling in. But based on what's public so far, this looks less like Canada folding and more like Canada picking its battles, happy to hand over the headline as long as it keeps the bridge. Do you think this was smart negotiating, or did Canada give up more than it's letting on? Subscribe to Unbiased Canada, hit like, and tell us in the comments.